Thanks, Ciarán. I'd like to ask the Minister if he agrees that there is a case to be made for the State to subsidise the connection for business premises to metropolitan area networks where the commercial case isn't there for ENET, who's managing it, and in a case, therefore, where ENET has decided that it's not going to make the connections. Thank you.
Minister. Thank you. The state-owned metropolitan area networks, or the MANs, have played an important role in driving competition in the regions and have facilitated large and small retail service providers operating in a fully liberalised market in providing high-speed broadband services without having to build their own networks. The MANs provide a link between national backhaul networks and the so-called last-mile access networks that deliver telecommunications services to citizens and businesses. The 88 MANs, which cover 94 regional towns and cities, are managed, maintained, marketed and operated under a concession by a management services entity, an MSE. The MSE provides fibre-based services and products to licensed telecommunications operators on a wholesale open access basis. The MSE operates on a commercial basis, and the cost of connecting to the MAN must be recovered by the MSE. The MSE works with operators to encourage them to use the MANs to provide downstream services. The decision, however, to avail of the MANs is ultimately based on the operator's own commercial business case. Under EU state aid rules, the state can only intervene in cases of clear market failure. Any question of subsidising connections to the MANs would come within this area of state aid. The current focus of policy is to deliver high-speed broadband services through a state-led intervention in the broadband market, where market failure has been demonstrated. The proposed intervention will not be targeted at any individual operator or infrastructure. Instead, minimum service standards will be determined, and operators such as ENET may bid to provide the infrastructure to deliver those services. The mapping exercise under the National Broadband Plan shows that all MANs towns will have access to commercial high-speed broadband by the end of 2016. In this regard, under EU state aid rules, the state cannot further subsidise services in those areas. While take-up of the MANs by service providers was slow in the initial stages, in part because the MANs were ahead of their time, the MSE has worked with service providers to enable them to connect to the MANs in a cost-effective manner, and take-up has improved significantly over the last few years.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks, Minister. The specific issue is this. The state paid a lot of money a few years ago to put these fibre loops in the ground, and has then passed over management to connect those to a commercial entity called ENET. ENET's position is, if we can make money out of connecting these, we will. If we can't make money out of connecting them, we won't. So there's a lot of fibre in the ground that ENET have said, we're not connecting this up because we're not going to make any money out of it. 2 of them are in Wicklow, but they're all over the country. There's a loop in Kilcool, Newtown, Greystones, and there's a loop in Blessington. So the problem we have is this. We have businesses screaming out for broadband connectivity and fibre connectivity. The state has put public money into putting this fibre outside the premises, but now a commercial entity is saying, well, we're not making any money out of doing the final bit of the connection. So the same case for using state money to put the fibre in the ground applies to connect the fibre up to the businesses. There are going to be several places where the National Broadband Plan won't simply supersede all of this. So could I ask the Minister to go back and take a look at the logic that says the state has paid the money to put them in the ground. It is insufficient to now take a hands-off approach for the state and say, well, if ENET can make money out of it, fine. If ENET can't make money out of it, that's also fine. That bit's not fine.
Thank you, Deputy.
So I'm asking, could you work with your department to see case by case, and I'd ask you to look at the 2 for the area I represent. If case by case, the question I'm asking, Minister, is what is the commercial gap? So in Blessington, for example, and I'll finish on this, Chair. In Blessington, for example, it may be a commercial gap of €10,000, in which case it should be immediately provided. Thank you,
Deputy Minister. Yeah. Well, there are constraints in relation to state intervention and funding and subsidising activity, other than in circumstances where there's clear market failure, and the deputies would know that. But he raises an interesting issue in terms of infrastructure that's already there, and is it in fact being used in the way that was intended and funded for? I take his point. As I said in my introductory remarks, from what I can see, having preparing for the response to this question, most, if not all, of the areas covered by the MANs are in the so-called blue area for the National Broadband Plan, so that the expectation is, and the assurance is, that the commercial sector will have in any event provided high-speed broadband to all of those homes and premises by the end of 2016. So the question is, what's the best intervention, and what's the most appropriate intervention? To make a new state aid application in relation to a perceived market failure related to demands, or to proceed on with the National Broadband Plan. But the Deputy raises I'm very happy to engage with the Deputy further in this, and I will do as he asks. I will certainly have a look more closely at what he says, particularly in relation to Wicklow. It's a fair point, and I'm happy to discuss it with him further on subsequent occasion.
Thank you, Minister.